And welcome to EMS Underground. I am Charles McFall, media specialist here, along with Tom Camplake
Hey, everybody.
and special guest, Mr. Mark Kennedy.
Hi, everybody.
So we've got some interesting things going on today. Mark is going to be talking about the SIREN Act, and has it? I know we're going to get into all details on this and that, but is it still in process or has it passed already?
Process. It's still in the House of Representatives, and the Farm Bill. So if you see the Farm Bill, you know that one large EMS.
Gotcha. All right, now we are breaking up some. So for those of you watching at home, it's not your imagination. We're having some audio breaks for some reason. We're going to be working on it as we go through here. So first off, Tom, how do you know Mark? How did that work out?
Well, Mark came to us. He came all the way down from Nauvoo, Illinois, to take our advanced EMT course.
That's a long way to drive every week.
That was a long commute.
Well, I'll tell you, we would get up. We'd get up early the day before and spend an entire day driving. It took us about 12 to 13. I think we came there about 4 or 5 different weekends. One to do our clinical work, our and work on time. And made it go up and do our bills checkoff, which I got to tell you, really was a lot of fun. We get down there, and not only was it serious, but the people were nice, and the students were as if we got to know them and were actually in class with them.
Yeah. Yeah, the format of the program worked out for y'all a lot, right?
Yeah, the format, of course, a lot of the study online, it was actually a really good format. Probably true, but that's really format. Remember, we had another gentleman, Bill Gallagher, who came down and joined us at Georgia Institute of EMS.
Yeah.
And so we got to put our heads together, study together, and one of our purposes from having to come from Illinois is that, one, the reputation of the school, and two, because you offered an ability here.
All right.
Gotcha.
Ooh.
We're changing up a little bit of the audio here because
Yeah.
all of a sudden we're having some audio issues. And I think it's more of a cable issue on our end.
I think it's the internet connection here, because this audio is what's breaking up. But it's fine. Again, we're going to make it work.
So the siren, what made you want to get into politics?
Well, as soon as we had finished our advanced EMT program at your school, we started to realize that Illinois had some problems, that they were blocking the advanced EMT licensing here in the state. And so we started to challenge that. We went to the state health, we went to the Department of Public Health, and started pushing on it. And that's when we started to realize that there's a lot of legislative issues that need support. We started an organization, EMS.com. The organization is called the Professional Emergency Responder Society of Illinois. It includes police, fire, EMS, and we started kind of building a membership of people who wanted to see some changes in the laws in Illinois. Illinois is a lot different than other states, and they don't take on some of the national curriculum. They won't take on the national, in terms of respecting it and accepting.
Like the National Registry is what you're talking about.
The National Registry. So on the National Registry, the National Registry curriculum and curriculum set out by the National Association of EMTs in terms of a national standard, Illinois was bucking that. And so that's what really got us to, one, start the organization Peers, two, start looking at a broader scope of legislation. That grew into affiliating with NEMT as an organization, and then seeing some national legislation that would be helpful to everybody in our industry, not just the SIREN Act, which produces $20 for training, EMT education, retention of EMTs, which is a big piece of language in that bill, that we could actually use money to pay EMTs in rural communities so they'll stay on. A lot of times they come on and they volunteer, but they don't really stay motivated long enough to stay years because there's nothing in it for them.
Right.
And if you give somebody a couple $100 a month, that alone keeps them on, and there's an incentive just to keep them on.
Now, I remember I went up to Minnesota to take a class on, it was a consortium that I went to, and there was a lot of people up there that were from these systems where it was hard to retain these volunteers. Because there was no organized, in a lot of places there'd be no paramedic for several counties. There'd be like one paramedic in 3 or 4 counties with a volunteer ambulance squad somewhere, and somebody would jump in the ambulance, run to the scene, and then the paramedic would come from 3 counties away to meet them. Is that kind of what you're running into?
Yeah, and what we were finding in early in the rural area where I am now is that we would have to get a paramedic that might be 8 miles down the road waiting on a country road intersection in a car, and we would have to drive that way, pick him up, turn ALS, and then off to the hospital.
Right.
Well, from your years of experience and what I learned at the GA Institute of EMS, that seconds matter, you know, and minutes definitely matter. So it's important to get highly trained people, and that's why that advanced EMT course and the advanced EMT level is so important. I can't get a whole bunch of people to become paramedics in the rural community.
Right.
Push them to that advanced EMT level. We can get them to become advanced EMTs, and most, or let me just, not exactly, a lot of the advanced skills that are necessary to save somebody's life on scene can be done by an advanced EMT. It doesn't always level that does it. So I find myself, when I'm responding ALS as a paramedic, that an advanced EMT could have done every single thing I was doing in the back of that ambulance.
Probably 80+% of the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so that's the answer and the solution to rural America, that the transport time is always somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes to an appropriate hospital. With a lot of young, or a lot of families in rural communities think, and wrongfully so, that any hospital will do. And that's not true. I mean, it's got an appropriate hospital. I can take you to a critical access hospital, but they're park you in the emergency room and call for a helicopter and and then take you on to that further place. If we could turn, and I'm talking about rural communities now, I'm not talking about our cities. If we could turn our ambulances into those emergency rooms and provide almost everything, if not, I can't, provide everything an emergency room would provide you with, right at the scene, then I don't have to be building hospitals all throughout rural America, making a giant mountain problem.
Right.
No, I can actually fix it with an advanced EMT and an ALS service. I can fix 80 to 90% of those problems.
Yeah, the problem in rural America is that there's not a lot of volume there, so a lot of the big services aren't going there because it's a lose money proposition for them. And unless we get something set up where they're making money, we're not going to get there. And we just lost him. I'm going to try calling back.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But it's definitely very interesting that I want to know how the money plays out and how it's supposed to work.
There he is.
I'm back.
That happens sometimes. It's FaceTime.
Yeah, sure. And so, the services that aren't looking, that can't make money out of this or capitalize on it to a point of making it worth it to them, and Tom, except the aeromedical transport.
Yeah.
This is where they make their money, but and a lot of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's trying to reach those.
But you only have so many helicopters.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we've got MedForce aeromedical transport, and we've got Aerovac in our area, and both of them are very successful companies and doing a fantastic job for the patients and the community. So, but again, those of us who are on the ground, who are in the bedroom next to the patient, the advanced EMT comes in, and that's where we can have in our community here. And I'll talk about Nauvoo, Illinois. We have 2 paramedics, Vic Gallagher, who is a flight a certified flight paramedic and a critical care paramedic, and myself, which I went on after I left the Georgia Institute of EMS.
You kept trucking forward.
Yeah, and then I went on to become a critical care paramedic and start doing critical care transport. So the 2 of us work in a small community of about 1,000 people. So we're pretty set. When she's off, I'm on, and we cover the town pretty well. But
it's just the 2 of you?
It's just the 2 of you?
It's the 2 of us who are at the advanced level.
Yeah.
But
you're the only 2 paramedics. I mean, and that's horrible, Mark, to only have 2 paramedics, because what happens whenever you're sick and she's sick, or she's on vacation, you get sick, then there's no paramedic coverage.
That's right. And believe it or not, the 2 of us are going to be at the World Expo in Nashville. So it's going to leave our town uncovered. But Tom, this is why we're having this discussion. And this is why, and this was the catalyst that got me into the legislative process. We need the money out here to train more people, to have more people on staff. We need to stop having BLS ambulance services in every small community in rural America and start putting it up to an ALS, or what they call, and you might be familiar with the term, provisional ALS.
Right.
Where a paramedic steps onto the ambulance that now turns into an ALS ambulance. So
exactly.
We need those things. And where that all starts is getting funding. And the SIREN Act is going to provide the funding for that. And it will be a competitive grant only for rural America. So those who are actually in the smallest communities will actually get some of that money first.
Yes.
And what was happening, if I could just mention, and this might happen in Georgia in some aspects of financing, federal financing in Georgia, they were giving the money originally to the critical access hospitals. They were giving it to the resource hospital.
Right.
The resource hospital would then invite you to some of their training they'd already had planned in the hospital, and then kept the cash.
And kept the cash. Yeah, I've seen that a lot here too. I've known ambulance, services that were hospital based, and what they did is they would get subsidy money in, and they would tell the county, "Hey, we're buying 2 new ambulances this year," and the county would approve it. And then next thing you know, the hospital got the money, and we'd be lucky to get 1 ambulance.
Includes language that it can no longer go through the resource hospital. The money has to go directly to the EMS service or fire service that has that ambulance service. So that's one of the pieces. That's one of the part of the language that's in the SIREN Act that we really appreciate. We had Senator Dick Durbin. And we had other congressmen who were involved in creating some of that language. But Senator Dick Durbin's really the one who got it through the Senate, changed the language, got it attached to the Farm Bill, and so we're grateful for it. And I think it's going to pass. We're hoping that it's going to pass soon. But there's so much drama and chaos sometimes wrapped around what's going on in D.C.
Right. Yeah. Well, a problem that I've always ran into on the political side of EMS is that we, as a society, we don't value it like we should. You'll have men and women go to a hairdresser, barber, or to a nail salon, and without question, pay the extra money, $100 a month for these services. But they don't want to pay anything for EMS service. You know, and the tax money that they're paying out that goes to EMS service is less than $100 a year per person, I'm sure, probably up where you're at. But they'll have no problem going to get their hair cut and their hair colored and spend $100 and something a month. And then give tips and everything else, but they don't want to pay and fund an EMS service.
Well,
And its priorities.
you know, I'm hoping that changes, and one of our legislative goals is to get that to change. Of course, you know, they talk in different conferences. If you go to the National Association of EMTs, EMS on the Hill Day, their pre-conference for the day, they have a conference just before they go on the Hill the next day. Some of the discussion and I'm talking about the discussion during the coffee breaks, is that they'd like to get away from the Department of Highway.
NHTSA.
And they're trying to get away from NHTSA and Creative. They're saying that what's holding us in there is some of the funding that was used for retirement, and that they'd have busting away from that. But at any rate, I think we have to get our own brand, our own level of serviceable respect. You know, the fire service, and you know, they're our brothers. We're not challenging their money or challenging their work at all. But they get somewhere in the vicinity of $30 billion a year in federal funding. EMS doesn't get a tenth of that, and we're going on calls every day, all day.
Most people think they don't associate. They don't know the difference. They think that we're all firemen. And the people are, and even the people I think in the legislature, I don't think they know either. Or they don't listen. So they're we're giving billions of dollars to first responders, and they lump us into this first responder group. But I've worked in this field for 20 plus years, and I've worked in fire stations. And I'm going to tell you, the majority of the time when a call drops, it's that ambulance going out. It's not the fire truck.
Right.
You know, the fire truck may go out 1 or 2 times, 3 times a day. That ambulance goes out 12 plus times a day.
And as much contact as we're making with patients, I would like to think that we're actually making progress in educating America. It's really the stereotype that fire and ambulance are the same people. And the rural communities, to Flanagan, Illinois, to a few other rural communities here in Illinois that I don't want to mention because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but they've got $2 million worth of fire trucks in the garage, and they got a $30,000 ambulance. Those fire trucks have got dust on them, and that ambulance goes all the time.
Right.
That's really what rural America's facing in the way of that, but have to change.
Another issue that I have in rural America, because I've lived in rural America before and I have friends there, is that you'll have these governments and they rely on you to volunteer your time.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong, and trust me, I support our volunteers. They are true heroes for volunteering their time, and we need it. But however, that same government has no problem paying the city lawyer or the city, you know, the city's lawyer $1 million plus a year. They have no problem playing, and he's part-time, not even full-time. Just comes in at the city council meetings and makes sure that things and reviews paperwork, but they still have their own practice, doing their own thing, and getting upwards of $1 million a year just doing that. Same thing with their accounting. The city or county accounting. They don't expect accountants to come in and do that as volunteers, but they expect the EMS folks to be volunteers and firefighters to be volunteers as well. And the problem is EMS, like fire, is different from EMS. You know, EMS has a lot of continuing education to do, and so does fire, but it's different. You know what I mean? It's a huge responsibility, and you need somebody there at a moment's notice. You know, like if a house is on fire and somebody's stuck in there, you need trained firefighters to go in there and get them. But the majority of the time, if there's nobody stuck in there, you let the house burn to the ground versus risking somebody's life. For us, if we get called out, we have to perform at that level. We don't get to choose. Well, today we're going to let them go. we have to be prepared and ready to do what we got to do. And that means that if you're going to be on the EMS side, that means you got to commit to continuing education, continuing growth, because the other thing is too, it's always changing. The standard is always changing. There's always a new drug, there's a new technique, a new something, and you have to stay on top of it. And it gets overwhelming for volunteers to do because, hey, I've got to work 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 or 6 to 6 or whatever at my regular job. And I'm working overtime to make ends meet at my other job. And then I'm doing this volunteer thing and I got my wife and kids. You know, what do we do? So
I'm glad that that's why in that SIREN Act it talks about retention. The language is in there also to use for retention. And that if I can take $15,000 and divide it up among 5 guys over a period of 12 months and to subsidize some of what they're going, even if I just made half the mortgage go away, that's enough incentive to keep them coming back. And America's changing. And I'm not going to beat up. I know we've all kind of gotten away with beating up on Gen X for a while and but volunteerism has changed. It's not that character in America is changed, and maybe not for the worse, but a lot of people don't have time, and the economy does require you to compete harder and faster, and they don't have the energy or the time to volunteer. So, but I'd like to mention also the Good Samaritan Professionals Act, House Resolution 1876. It too protects it's another form of that affects a lot more of people other than just rural. That act allows people to show up to these disasters that we've seen, and I know Georgia just had its own problems. But this particular Good Samaritan Act, you and I aren't covered if our service gets called up and we go down.
And we're getting compensation.
Right, and we're not getting covered by that Good Samaritan Act. And yet this isn't our mess. This isn't our hurricane. And yet, so when people show up, there's another act out there that's passing slowly through the process of protecting people who do leave these communities, these volunteers that we're talking about.
Right.
And it protects them on a federal level. So if it gets designated as a federal disaster, anybody who responds, that local team, the local EMS agency who's dealing with the crisis, everybody who comes from whether you're with a service or not, you get covered by that Good Samaritan Act. So volunteers do have something to look forward to in that, you know.
Good. So. I mean, that's a lot of good work. And are you doing this with the NAEMT, or are you associated with the NAEMT?
I am. I'm actually, our organization is affiliated with them, but a lot of the work that our organization does is on its own. And we go out, we do affiliate with them as an organization, but we work the state, we work the Illinois state, we work the rural angle.
Right.
They're working the national stuff, and we're actually out here on the streets pushing not only, again, and I'm going to say it again, you know, that kind of might sound a little strange, but, you know, I got my GED back in 1985 or 6, but it's one of the proudest moments of my life, and I think a lot of GED alumni will say, I'll never forget.
I'm one of those too.
The day it showed up, it's still one of the most powerful accomplishments of my life, right? And I feel that way about my advanced EMT that I got there at your school, and the reason why is it was just one of those pivotal moments where I'm not just in, I'm all the way in now.
Yeah.
And it felt good. So I'm out. The reason why I'm saying that and prefacing what I'm about to say with that is we're pushing advanced EMT level stuff here in Illinois really hard, and we're really wanting to see the advanced EMT organizations stay strong. And I know there's been some people that have been trying to knock some of the legs out from under it, but it's not. That's not right. And
will they allow y'all to teach advanced EMT up there?
They do, but we don't have a way to become nationally certified.
So why is it not being recognized by Illinois?
Charles, it's because Illinois is just that unique state that thinks they don't need the world. Our Illinois Department of Public Health thinks that It knows better than everybody else, and it's going to make the decisions that it wants to make. It's trying to get rid of that advanced level or keep it down and not allow it to blossom, because it wants to create its own, listen to this language, it wants to create its own monster, an EI/advanced.
Like an I-99?
Like an I-99, but they want to actually do some other things. But this process is, they've talked about it for a year or so, and for the last 2 years they've been putting together groups of people to create testing and curriculum for it. And they were supposed to have it finished by the end of 2018, and here we are coming up on the end of 2018, and they're no further than really when they started a year ago.
So pretty much what's happening is they're spending money.
Exactly.
It's people, because you'll get into this thing, and I know if I've got any of my fellow educators out there, and there's some educators, believe it or not, here in Georgia that they don't agree with me or like me that much, because I believe that there is an educrat. Have you ever heard of that? It's like a bureaucrat, but in education. And all they do is sit around and try to figure out ways to justify their phony baloney job. And the thing is, the advanced EMT curriculum is already set. Why would they wait? They could spend that money on something going towards the rural health care. I guarantee they spent tens and thousands, if not six figures, on what they're doing now. If you think of the salary of 2 or 3 people, that's $100,000 that could be going towards something to do something that's already made and is widely accepted throughout the country.
I agree with you. And in fact, I'll point out that one of the highest paid people in our rural area is the local school superintendent, making $180,000 a year. And we have kids who are struggling to get computers and struggling to keep the Wi-Fi on in the building. And so the money is there.
It's just going the wrong places.
It's in the wrong places. Yeah. It's in the not important. So I think the state of Illinois, and that's why I'm saying we're different from the NAEMT, or we have our own dogfight. But that's why, and in Illinois, they are wasting time and money by trying to go around the set curriculum of advanced EMT. And I'm telling you, as a person who is an advanced provider in a rural community, and I also work with I happen to work across I live right on the Mississippi River. So I travel to County in Iowa, and I've worked at Great River Medical Center in Iowa. We need that advanced level, because I can't get, as I said a little earlier, and I don't mean to rehash it, but I can't get a lot of these young guys around here to go sit through a 12-month or a 24-month paramedic program.
Right. I mean, paramedic is just, especially now with the new accreditation standards and everything, it's too big.
Yeah.
It's not helping the rural or the small areas. And they've made it where they thought they were helping, they're done nothing but hurt.
That's right.
There is a nationwide, and I've wanted to do, and I like to call out accreditation on this, because accreditation was supposed to make things better, and it's not. There's less schools, and there's 2 medics in your town. There's no reason why you can't put on a paramedic class that follows standards in your town.
That's right. And by the way, the state of Illinois says you can put one on, but they can only be a paramedic in the state of Illinois, and they'll
Right.
have to, and you'll have to get affiliated with a college, and the curriculum that's actually you're going to use, you can't use any standard curriculum that anybody gives you. You have to use it through the accrediting hospital that you're working through. So this sets a standard up to the whole state that each hospital has its own ideas of what they want to do. We already know that long discussion.
Right, yeah.
But hospital has its own ideas how they want to roll out their education plan. And this is what's bottlenecking everything. And this is what stopped us from getting these paramedics on. And then, as you know, and again, one of the reasons why a group of us came from Illinois to attend Georgia Institute of EMS was because the national accreditation, the national affiliation, the national certification within our EMT. We need the NREMT because I want to go across the river and work, and I also want to be able to adjust my career or set my foundation of my career where I can go work in other places. I don't want to be trapped right here in Illinois, and then I have to do the entire process if I ever decide I'm going to move. Those are the roadblocks. This is why I have a choice. I had to get into the legislative part of EMS and chase this stuff down and start tackling it and making it go.
The problem is, the roadblocks you're coming up against is the old guard.
Yes. Yes. So a discussion like this is important, and the people who are listening and those who will listen in the future, it's important that you contact, and I'm not just talking about write your congressman, get a hold of your local association, get involved in those people who are changing legislative stuff. Join the National Association of EMTs for $25 a year. Go to their EMS on the Hill Day and meet your local congressman, senator, and state representatives, and of course their staff members, and build the relationship so we can start actually making changes to this. Find out in your community, in your state, who's on the congressional EMS caucus, and contact them and say, listen, where are your foot tracks? What have you done to help us? And I'm going to, and I don't mean to go foam at the mouth this, but I've stood in front of 5 senators, U.S. in Washington, in the Capitol building, and told them, I'm not pitching anything. I'm 911. I shouldn't have to pitch a thing. You know, this is a subject that's agreeable to everybody who dials 911, whose mother's on the ground and not breathing. We don't have to explain ourselves. I'm telling you, these are the basis of what we need to make our system move forward. And Tom and Charles, they go for it. They understand that, and they but without them yelling this and saying, "This is what we need," and we're not going to ask twice. I've done that pitch, and they've gone with it every time. And this is why we've been successful here in Illinois, at least on a national level, and the states cracking up into pieces and deciding to go with us on what we're asking for. So, yeah.
Well, you keep working hard at it. I know it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. But it's a fun one. Listen, I love being in the back of an ambulance, and I love helping people, and I pinch myself every day I get to put this uniform on.
Well, I assume that going up that battle, it's probably not making a lot of people happy, right?
Yeah, some of the old guard, who's like you just mentioned, whose money and careers are hinged on keeping the smoke in the air. You know.
But you think they would wake up and see that their career and stuff would be, that this isn't going to take away from their career. It's actually probably going to give them more justification for their job.
There's enough work to do in this direction that will actually keep you fed.
But one issue you'll run into on that level as well, and this is something I ran into when I worked in state government, is that we would start classes. It's teaching. When I started at a school, they had 4 paramedic students there, and they were happy with it. And then I came along, and I became program director, and we jumped from 4 students to 50 students. And everybody was and you don't know how many times I got stabbed in the back, how much fighting I had to go through, because everybody in the department was getting paid the same to do 4 students or 50 students. So what worked out better for them? That's why I'm at Georgia Institute of EMS.
That's right. I know it.
It works out better for everybody here when we're doing a good job in customer service. Over there, they'd start off with classes of 20 and whittle them down and end with 4. So what's it better? And sometimes state governments can be the same. It's more work for them. I know here in Georgia, we've got a really good framework. We have a good relationship with our state agency, and they work really hard. And I think Georgia has a really good response system, EMS system, because I don't know of many communities, and I know there's some in rural South Georgia, but I don't know of any that are in the same shape as yours are in.
Well, as you know, Illinois has its challenges on every single level. And some people who don't live near Illinois or know about it, we struggle. And I hate to paint our state so shady, but 3 of our last governors are sitting in prison cells tonight.
Oh goodness.
And the next one's and there's smoke coming out of Chicago as we speak. So
yeah,
there's a lot.
Chicago is not a safe city, is it?
There are portions of it. The the southeast of Chicago is not a safe city to drive through. But Chicago, Michigan Ave, and these other places are like New York City, like Manhattan. You can't stand in Manhattan and not turn it 180 degrees around and look, it's 360 degrees, and look and see 5 cops. That will happen. And the same thing in Chicago. A lot of Chicago, there's a lot of police everywhere that are kind of kept the city safe. But yeah, there's portions of Chicago you're hearing about that are. I went to a National Association of EMS Educators conference or summit here in Champaign, Illinois, a few months ago, and I listened to paramedics tell stories where they grabbed their 115-pound female partner, threw her over their shoulder, and was running out of a building as bullets were hitting the wall.
Wow.
Behind, running, and he says, ran as fast, we'd have been hit. Cops who've had suspects up against the side of the ambulance who are now starting to struggle with the suspect, thinking there are going to be bullets coming through this ambulance, and so,
wow.
And those are real stories I was hearing about parts of Chicago. So, yeah, real challenges up there, so.
Makes us feel safer down here.
we our biggest complaint is that we don't have stuff like that. Of course, we've responded to things in crazy scenarios, but violence doesn't seem to have reached us. And I know that some EMS agencies are going with the flak jackets, or at least some bulletproof vests or chest shields and stuff, and rightly so. But we've been pretty good, and I loved Covington, Georgia. It was my first time coming to Georgia was when I came to Georgia Institute of EMS.
Wow.
And I fell in love with it. I mean, I listened to kids talking with that accent in the Circle K or the local convenience store. And the first time I ever ate at a Firehouse sub was the one over there near the...
right down the road, yeah?
Every town I go to, if I see it on my phone, I say, oh, I know where I'm going.
Going to Firehouse.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, to now the bill, whenever you came up with this idea and this passion, the first thing that you did, how did you get started with it? Did you just call your congressman, or did you email?
There was an old existing bill that gave $10 million to all the resource hospitals. And first thing I did was start contacting the National Association of EMTs and finding out what their legislative agenda was and how it fit in there, and found out that they were trying to create something the same way. So we went to Washington, D.C. We went to Congressman LaHood's office and started presenting the idea that we need a better bill. And we need something that has real money and eliminates the middle people that are sucking up all the money by the time it reaches the EMS agencies. And so that turned into a group of us collaboratively creating language. Max Cannon is another name that was involved in this. Kim and Melissa from the National Association of EMTs. A few people from the American Ambulance Association, and everybody kind of put their little 2 cents into it. Once we got the act created, or at least the language to it, we took it to Senator Dick Durbin. And I'm going to tell you something, and this is a really important aspect of Washington, D.C. There really isn't a swamp to drain up there. And Republicans and the Senate work together on hundreds of bills. Work together. There's no war among them. And I know the MSNBC and Fox News both present this giant civil war that's going on. These guys are all in offices together, and once they got this, everybody started to come to the bill, start helping to create it. And Dick Durbin is the one who sponsored it and got it into the Senate, and then got a hold of it. The groups in the Senate, and then it went. And that's when they started literally changing and adding the things we asked them to add.
Right.
And so the start was taking a bad that was eating us alive and changing it and creating it into a better bill and getting it passed and getting it in front of the House and in front of the Senate.
So right now it's in committee.
Right now it's out of committee and it's on the House and it's
so it's gone through the Senate already. So it's passed the Senate.
made it past the Senate. It went into committee. It came out of committee. It's on the farm bill. It's pork. It's 20 and I know pork has got a bad name too.
Right. Everybody, every senator, every congressman, that's what Washington is. It's a pork bill, yeah.
Some of the very best legislation coming out of I've been to DC now 4 times this year, and I've been to DC every year for the last 3 years, and several times. And I can tell you this as an American, the very best legislation coming out of DC is pork.
Yeah.
These are the SIREN Acts. These are the Good Samaritan Act. These are the Veterans Reimbursement Acts. Are all pork bills that are inside of larger bills, and so it's made it through the House. It's now. I'm sorry, it made it to the Senate, came through committee. It's in the House. It's on the Farm Bill, provided nobody puts up an objection to it. One.
Yeah.
And that the Farm Bill actually does pass. Now it's really the Agriculture and Nutrition Bill. Mm-hmm. So, which means food stamps. And so in today.
Yeah.
You know, those are words we don't like to use. You know.
Now, has it been sent to committee in the House yet?
It has, and it's been out of committee in the House.
So out on the floor.
It's on the floor.
Okay.
I expected it. In fact, I went to D.C. a few weeks ago thinking it was going to pass while I was there. I landed in D.C. on the 24th, and I had my committee meeting. We had a committee meeting in the Capitol.
Right.
27th, which just happened to be the day that Kavanaugh was testifying and Dr. Ford was testifying.
Wow.
So imagine the whole.
But it was chaos.
Oh, it was unbelievable. In fact, as many times as I've been there, it was such a spectacle that I really kind of enjoyed walking around watching the process of American protest and really kind of got intrigued by it. We have an amazing government. We have an amazing country. You know,
and just having the freedom to protest.
Exactly. And so again, those who are listening now and will listen in the future, if you hear on the television that the Farm Bill has passed,
we won.
This large EMS piece of legislation has passed.
Yeah. So the next steps for people out there is that it's got to go through the House. It's got to pass as is through the House. If there's any changes, then it has to go to a conference committee, and then from the conference committee, then it has to go back to the Senate and the House and pass the same bill.
The same bill, and they can make subtle changes to it in the House and pass it in the House, and that's it. They can carve it off. In fact, one of the first things they did was they carved off from the $20 million, $1.5 million. Well, I went back to D.C. to argue that, and some of the people that I'm working with were like, "Well, listen, it's only $1.5 million."
Only?
Yeah, listen.
Well, then just give it to me. If it's only $1.5 million.
Lifetime of money to some people. You know what I mean? That's nothing just to say. I mean, a 2-day trip and an $800 plane ticket. You know, I'm going after this.
Yeah.
You know, and, at any rate, we got it pushed right back up to the 20 million mark, and so we're that it passes and gets through there. That's going to be, and there's other legislation that's also has just as much impact on EMS rurally and nationally that deserves credit, deserves some attention. But this is a big. So we're looking for the Farm Bill. Keep your eye open for that, and when you see it pass, cheer. I believe that. And here's another thing. If it makes it through the year and Congress goes to recess and comes back, we might have to reset in the next year. We'll have this passed by Christmas. Before the Christmas break, the Farm Bill has to be passed. And this is where all of us in EMS who can hear this message and hear this broadcast, you have to contact your congressman. Don't contact your senator at this point.
Congressman.
And lean on them and and say, well, your congressman doesn't hear these things. I know. Do even better than contact your congressman. Contact congressional staff members and lean all over them and call them on a basis and remind them who you are. And if you're affiliated with the Georgia EMS Association, let them know that. Tell them we're calling on behalf. I'm a member of the Georgia EMS. I've been a paramedic or an EMT or an advanced for this many years, and I'm telling you, we want this passed. We need this money. So, and as you know, Georgia, a lot of Georgia is rural.
Yes. Most of Georgia's rural. most people just think we're the state of Atlanta, and we're not. Is the $20 million, is that one-time funding, or is that every year? Would that be every year?
$20 million. Yeah. Yeah. It'll renew every year. We'd like to set it up eventually, and of course not this year, but we'd like to set it up so that it automatically renews and they don't have to vote on it every year.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would be. How if it passes, how are the rural EMS services? How will they get access to the funding? How will they apply for it, or?
Yeah, they'll apply for a grant process. They can apply for a grant process. They'll apply for the grant, and they'll have to apply like any other grant. But a lot of the EMS agencies are already applying for grants and know how to do this.
Is it going to go through the Department of Agriculture?
It'll go through the Department of Agriculture. It's actually an agriculture bill. Now, it's a competitive grant, so depending who you are and what you ask for.
And what you're going to do with it.
And then let me give 2 tips on grant writing that I learned in the hallways, not associated with anybody in terms of any grant writers. Don't write your grant with perfect language. Don't get a professional grant writer to come write your grant. They see misspelled words. They like grammatical inaccuracies. They like when you're talking in plain talk. Those are the grants they like to. And then once the grant gets sent, this is a good piece of advice that I've gotten from a few conferences. Don't call yourself and have your own organization follow up on it. Don't have the people who wrote the grant be the one chasing it down to see where it's at and how it's doing. Once the grant leaves, go get your state legislators. And I mean those people who are locally, your state legislator who's probably in Covington and covers whatever his or her name is, find out who that person is and ask them to follow up on the grant. Ask them to call and find out where the process is that grant. Those tips, I'm told, seem to make the best results on getting the money that you need. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, is this grant going to only, because a lot of times with grants, and especially through the federal funding, they only want to fund other government agencies or nonprofits. Most of EMS is for profit. Service. So, and even a lot of the volunteer services have a hard time securing 501c3, status. Is this going to be only for 501c3s, or is it available for any EMS service?
Really, it's available for any EMS service, but I've heard, and unfortunately, the final details, we won't know the exact nature of the beast until it passes, but there has been discussion to only keep it for government agencies or government-funded EMS services. But you can only imagine that the National Association of EMS, the National Association of EMTs, and the American Ambulance Association, of course they object to that. Of course they want funding to be available for private services, because there's a lot of services also out there that are, as you know, that are private, doing a good job, and of course need that equipment.
Yeah, I mean, there's one, here locally, like National EMS. I mean, they cover Rockdale, Morgan, and Athens, Clark County, and I think even Oconee County too, right? So they cover in their private service because there's no agency there. Technically, here Newton is a private service because it's a private hospital-based service, but they are nonprofit, so. And I think I've lost your picture, but we still got your voice, Mark. So.
Okay. Yeah. No sweat. Well, you're getting luckier then.
Yeah. Okay.
So, at any rate, I'd like just to take a minute to mention one more, two more bills. House Resolution 1445, which is the Veterans Reimbursement for Emergency Ambulance Services Act, and that is that veterans are now, and this is an important bill that's making its way through Congress. Veterans, if they're at home, take them to the VA, takes them to another hospital, local hospital, and that chest pain turns out to be indigestion, then they don't pay the ambulance, and that's becoming a problem. It's been a problem. It's not because they're money. what's happening is veterans are not calling, they're getting the bill. So they're not calling the ambulance when they're having chest pain, thinking that's probably indigestion, and I don't want to pay an ambulance bill.
Right.
We've had a local guy here who he got the bill when we had taken him to the hospital. And several months later, this was probably a year later, he did not call when he had chest pain. He called his friend at 1 a.m. who was trying to drive him the 1 hour and 15 minutes to the VA hospital in a POV, and he died in the car on the way. So that example was put to the Senate and his particular case. So the Veterans Reimbursement for Emergency Ambulance Services Act reimburses ambulance services when they transport a veteran. Not unlike every other insurance company will reimburse you, but the VA won't if it turns out to be not emergent. This makes veterans have to sit there at home and diagnose themselves, and they diagnose incorrectly, then they have to be paid. They have to pay their own bill, and this bill eliminates that.
Yeah. Die. Well, what's been frustrating to me, because I'm a veteran myself, and I need to go, and I've never turned in my paperwork to the VA hospital. I've always relied on the, my own insurance and stuff. But I know the day's going to come where I'm going to have to rely on the VA.
Yes.
And it's scary, because if I was low income, I'd have one level of care. But because I'm a veteran, I get a lower level of care. And why are we giving our veterans a lower level of care? It should all be equal level of care.
Yeah, there should be a standard that we don't change based on economic background or any other socioeconomic.
It shouldn't be. It should be the same.
So another bill to take a look at or keep an eye on is the California ballot Proposition 8. I don't know if you know that, but California is changing some of its. There's a big bill out in California that's going to be on this November 6th. California Proposition 11. There's another one, Proposition 8. Ambulance employees paid on break, training and mental health services initiative. Yeah. It's good that it allows ambulance providers to require workers to remain on call during breaks. What this law is trying to do is, once we send you to break, whether it's an hour or you're down, you're not responding to calls, you're actually on break, and that if you are on call, that if you're not going to be put on break or you're going to remain on call, you get your full salary.
Right.
Now, listen, it sounds good, and that sounds good. Another part of it is provide additional training for EMTs and paramedics, and require employees to provide EMTs and paramedics with paid mental health services. They're really opposing this bill out in California. The EMTs, you're seeing EMTs out there holding signs and protesting because it's causing that EMT services have to hire 25% more employees in order to cover these breaks.
Which means it drops the pay.
Exactly. So, and I know that this all sounds good to the liberal ear, but it's not. It's actually becoming a financial burden to these services out there. We're watching that one closely, and if it does pass, you might see that now starting to travel across the United States.
Yeah, my stance on it is, and I've always worked 24-hour shifts. I think they should just do away with 24-hour shifts. I mean, 24-hour shifts. And Charles can attest to it too. It's just hard on your body, especially in a system like this. Now, we've both worked in systems like Jasper County, where we may go a whole shift and not run a call, or only run 1 or 2 calls, and that's fine. But if there should be a threshold, if you're working in a system and you don't get any downtime, I mean, because you can remember the days trying to go home, right, Charles, and not remembering how you got home.
Yeah.
You've been so tired. And we've got friends who have died on the way home.
Yeah.
Getting off work, and they have a wreck.
And there is legislation out there trying to address the tired EMT and paramedic and change that. And that you can only be on for so many hours at a time, and you can only have so many mileage calls. If you travel, if you've been driving for 3 hours, then you get entitled to so many hours of break and things.
Yeah, but then you get into the thing where they're going to have to hire more people and that's going to drop pay. I know, like right now here in Georgia, there's such a shortage of EMS personnel. Pay is through the roof right now. They're paying EMT basics $15 to $18 an hour in some places.
We're doing that in Iowa too. That there's just not enough people, and we're putting these kids through these students through the programs. Some of them are successful, as you know. You're an instructor and you a professional educator, so you know that a certain percentage you just can't get them through. But we're trying hard over in Iowa to get as many people through as we can, and it seems to be working pretty well to a point, So
right.
I taught college for 6 years, and I was in one of those colleges, and you know this, where they said, you will be passing everybody, and I took the challenge seriously. Your job was on the line if you had too many people fail out of your class. So I didn't cheat. This is just an educator's discussion, real quick, but I didn't cheat and pad the books for them. I got my butt motivated and got these kids motivated and shook them and got them to study.
Got them to study, yeah.
Just got creative, So I'm hoping that in EMS we do the same thing. Enough of material and expecting them to jump through the hoops. Get creative. Find a way to motivate them to pass,
Yeah, fortunately, I've never worked in a system that had a pass, made us pass the students, but if we had a high fail rate, they would look into what we were doing, as a QA thing, but there was never anything punitively done. I know here we bend over backwards to get the students through, and that's our goal.
Yeah, I've seen it, and I don't remember her name, and I wouldn't even say it for her own FERPA privileges or rights, but I had a student that I was in your program with, and everybody bent over backwards and worked really hard to get her through, and in the end she was successful. So
and that's what our school is about, trying to do.
Yeah.
Stuff.
I was afraid, Tom, when I first got there. I thought something that I'm gonna on this one, but it didn't happen. Late, the instructors and even those on the 10th day, and when the national registry came in, I was mortified. I got there the day before, got a hotel room, stayed up till 11, studied. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I walked out with the biggest, cheesiest smile on my face, and then I realized how much support I actually did have in that school. So really cool.
Well, we were glad to have you. Your excellent example was an excellent student, and we are proud that you chose us, Mark.
Yeah, I'm proud too, and I got the advice from Kendall Gallagher to go there, and Vicki Gallagher, but please believe me when I've texted you in the past and told you, and Matt has too, we're very proud alumni, and we haven't forgot our good experience there. And I've never gone to a state. I've been to 48 of the 50 states. I've never gone to a state where I felt so quickly at home and so loved than in Georgia. From getting gas to eating in the restaurants to sitting in school and standing out front with the other students on break. It was just a great experience. I really loved being at Georgia Institute of EMS. It was. I'm proud of my alumni there. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, with that said, we've come to the end. It's 3:30. Charles has been here, been very quiet. It's the quietest I've seen Charles in a long time.
That's I know.
I guess I talk too much. You get into the politics and all that stuff.
That's all you.
That's
anyway.
all me.
Yep.
So it's stuff.
Good.
We've got a lot going on, Charles. Since usually it's me saying what's going on. Why don't you take it, Charles? Tell us what's coming up.
All right, well, there's a couple things. We got the EMT class coming up November 12th. You can jump in. Registration is open. And that'll be the last EMT class we're kicking off for this year. And then right after that, we have an advanced psychomotor exam, what Mark was talking about taking. That is not worth stressing so much that you stay up all night studying, but it is something worth passing and getting. So we got that on December 1st. You need to register now because you have until mid-month of November to get that registered, or you can't do it. Then we got an advanced class starting December 5th. That's coming up. And you can see right over my head here behind me, you've got this site strolling through. We've got CPR of Georgia is now live. That is our CPR specific website that you can be a part of and schedule your classes, get recertifications. We got ACLS and PALS going through there as well. So check out CPRofGeorgia.com and you'll be able to get your classes, individual or group classes. And actually we have classes going all the time that you can jump in on and do it with our current students as well. So give that a look and see how it goes. And actually, Tom's got pulled up here. So there is that. And then I'm going to throw it back to you two guys. So Mark, we like to roll out with if someone wants to get a hold of you, find out more about this bill, or maybe get advice on how to write their own bill, how do they reach you?
Well, they can reach me through IllinoisEMS.com. That's our organization's website, and they can contact me through there by the email. If they want to just get on our newsletter that we send out, we don't call it a newsletter, we call it a shout out, and it kind of keeps you up to date. Also, Congress.gov. These bills that we've talked about today, you can actually go on to Congress.gov and put in your email address or your phone number, and every time Congress speaks, even for a moment on this bill, you'll get a text telling you where this bill's going and how it's moving. And so that's another great source. So IllinoisEMS.com or Congress.gov is a great source of information. So
Awesome.
Very cool. All right. Well, we do this every Friday from around 2:30 to whenever we get done, which is usually an hour. But we got a lot more cool stuff coming up in the near future. So stay tuned to Georgia Institute of EMS here on Facebook, and our website is Georgia Institute of EMS or GeorgiaEMT.com. Actually, is our website. So all the stuff is there. So give it a look.
Yep. Anything you want to say in closing?
yes, I absolutely do. I've been saving it for the entire show. Please tell your lovely wife, Barbara, I appreciate the videos and the singing and the other things that she sends to all her friends. I'm on her list of friends, so it's just been a real nice thing to see some of the great things she's doing, and I get to learn and see what's going on in your life through her great pictures and her video things. So
awesome. I'll let her know. She should be watching in the other room. So.
Okay. Well, listen. Thanks, you guys. It was a great discussion, and it's an honor to even have a chance to get back to my my roots with you guys and talk about this. So I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. I'm calling back.